All right, my third grade mathematicians, we're going to take a look at our fractions on our number lines, and we're going to look for equivalent fractions. Do you remember what equivalent fractions are and what that means? Remember with our hexagon cookies, we found some equivalent fractions, fractions that are the same amount, but they are divided in different ways. So remember, we had our whole hexagon cookie, and the trapezoid represented 1/2, okay? And then we looked at fractions that were equivalent to that 1/2, and we found that 3 of the 1/6 pieces equaled 1/2. So if I were to put the 3 1/6 pieces, so 3/6 with the 1/2, they would have the same amount, but it was cut in different ways. So if my friend Ella ate 3/6 of a cookie and I ate 1/2, we would have eaten the same amount. Okay, so we're going to take a look at our fractions on the number line, and I sort of redid mine and rearranged them so that we could see them a little bit better. Okay, so here's my number lines with my halves, fourths, and eighths. Okay, so take a look at your page 356 and see if that looks similar to yours. Okay, and then I have my thirds and sixths here. Okay, so take a look at your page 357, pause the video if you need to. And remember, we're all human, and so I may not have divided them equally perfect, but the intention is to have equal parts. All right, so let's first take a look at our halves. Okay, looking at the other number lines, and I'll put the thirds and sixths back up here in just a minute. I'm looking at 1/2. Okay, so let me put a dot there. Put a red dot so we can see it. Do you see any other fractions on the other number lines that that are marked halfway between 0 and 1? Let me straighten that up here. Do you see any other fractions that are marked halfway, exactly halfway between 0 and 1? Yeah, I see that 2/4 is marked halfway, and I can notice that since these number lines are the same length and labeled with the same size 1 holes, let me draw that line to show that they fall on the exact same point. So if Aunt A walked from 0 to 1/2 and Aunt B walked from 0 to 2/4, they would have walked the same distance. Okay? All right. Any other fractions halfway between 0 and 1? Yep, 4/8. If I were to, since we have the same size holes, I can draw that dotted line down there, and those fractions are equivalent. If Aunt C walked from 0 to 4/8, Aunt C would have walked the same distance as Aunt B and Aunt A. Okay, sometimes it helps again to think of a fraction bar. So if I drew a line from 0 to 1/2, 0 to 2/4, 0 to 4/8, that would be the same distance. Okay, let's take a look at our thirds and sixths. Do you see any other fractions that fall right in the middle from 0 to 1? I don't see it on the thirds because 1/2 would come about right there. So 1/3 is smaller than 1/2, or not as long of a distance, and 2/3 too big, but 3/6 falls right in between 0 and 1. Okay, so let's look at these equations, or an equation that we could write to represent equivalent fractions. So think about if you agree with this statement. Looking back at our, on page 356 with our halves, fourths, and eighths, would you agree that 1/2 equals 2/4? Think about those hexagon cookies. Think about what we saw on the number line. Think about your fraction tiles. Okay, so let's see about let's look at our fraction tiles. I have one hole. I always put my one hole because when you have different size holes, it shouldn't matter when you're comparing fractions, but I always want to compare the fraction to the whole, okay? So I have 1/2 of the whole here and 2/4. Oh, well, all right. And those, looking at 1/2 and 2/4, that's the same amount. So thinking about my number line, halves and fourths, 1/2, 2/4. Thinking about my fraction tiles, 1/2 and 2/4 are equivalent. They're equal, the same amount. If I were to have 1/2 of a brownie, and my friend Ella said she had 2/4 of a brownie, we would have had the same amount, okay? Think about the relationship between the numerator and denominators. If you think about the number lines as well, 1 out of 2 parts is right in the middle. If you think about fourths, halfway to 4 from 0 is 2, so 2/4. 4/8, if you think about the number 8, 4 is right in the middle from 0 to 8, 4/8. Same with 3/6. If you're thinking of the number line 0 to 6, 3 is right in the middle. 3 is half of 6. 4 is half of 8, 4/8. 2 is half of 4, 2/4. 1 is half of 2, 1/2. So I'm wondering what other fractions are 1/2. Think about that as we move into our next few lessons. Okay. Now, let's look at one more example. I'm going to go back to my number lines, and this time I'm going to look at my thirds and sixths. Okay, move this out of the way. I want you to look at 1/3. So this time I'll use a different color just in case. Look at 1/3. Okay. If you're looking at 1/3, do you see a fraction on the sixths number line that falls on the same point? I see 2/6, but I'm going to double check and make sure. And since these number lines are the same length, the whole 0 to 1 is the same. I can draw this line down here, and it looks like, get it up so you can see, 2/6 falls on the same point as 1/3. Okay, so let's see if that's true. Okay, I'm going to move my fraction tiles here. Let's see if 1/3 equals 2/6. Okay. So again, I have my whole up here, and I have my 1/3 of the whole there, and 2/6. Okay, so it looks like we have 1/3 and 2/6. So if my friend Ella said that she had 1/3 of a brownie, and I had 2/6 of a brownie, we would have the same amount. Okay, just cut differently. Okay, so double check on your number lines. Does your number lines represent this equivalent fraction? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to think about the fraction tiles, your fraction cookies, the brownies, the number lines, and I want you to think about what fractions on those number lines and in those representations and models show equivalent fractions. Okay, we're going to be continuing to talk about this through our next lessons, and we can add them to your chart of equivalent fractions that you have found. Okay, we are going to use these pages 356 and 357 in our next lessons and throughout the unit, so that we can continue to find equivalent fractions and be able to have discussions of comparing fractions. Okay? All right, great work today, guys, and I can't wait to continue this fraction journey with you.